Hey everyone, I'm Megan from Local Color OBX, and today I am going to be teaching you how to paint an Outer Banks beach. This is a free class, but if you enjoy it and want to support my small business, please visit localcolorobx.com and click on the event calendar. I am not going to paint out here, so let's go back to my studio and get started. So the first thing that we are going to paint is the sky, and if you have masking tape, you can take a piece of masking tape and put it across where your sky is going to start. If you don't have masking tape, you could use a ruler or a straight edge of some sort to draw a guideline for yourself. And then we are going to paint a base coat for the sky before we add all of the clouds. And that color is just white and blue swirled together. And it's actually lighter at the bottom and then darker at top, so I'm gonna make a light blue. And then just brush it on back and forth. It's okay if it goes on the tape a little bit, but try not to get a whole lot of paint on there because we don't want to get the tape wet, too saturated at least. Make that a little bit lighter. And then as I work my way up, I'm gonna add some more blue into my paint puddle to just make it a little bit darker. Just a little bit more blue. Just a little bit more blue. Okay, I like to paint my edges, so I'm gonna do that. Okay, so now that I have my edges done, I'm going to pause for a second while I blow dry, and then when I come back, we'll paint some clouds. Okay, so to do our clouds, we are going to start with just straight white. And I move to a smaller brush. I'm gonna dab the excess off to start. And I just start dabbing the paint on. Then you can kind of also like swirl it around a little bit. I'll do a few clouds on the edges too. Some up here, I need a little bit more paint. So I'm really just like dabbing it on, kind of swirling it around a little bit. And I also try and like do smaller dots to taper the edges out. And I'm going to demonstrate a few more of these, but then I'll switch into time lapse. So that one I used a little bit more paint. So I'm gonna make a bigger one. So I'm swirling it, dotting it, and kind of pulling it to the edge. Okay, so now that we have a few down, let's switch to time lapse. So now that I have all the white down, I am going to make a little bit of turquoise and start blending it into the clouds. So to do that, turquoise is blue, green, and white. So I am, let me pull this little hair off of here. Okay. I am going to mix a little bit of green into my blue and white mixture. I want a little bit more blue. White. That should be good to start. And then I'm just going to start dabbing it into my clouds. Make a little bit darker shade. And then I'm just gonna kind of go back and forth between turquoise and white. So I just dipped in some white and I'm just dabbing that in. That's more white. And I do this mostly along like the bottom of the clouds to be kind of like a shadow underneath it. I'm gonna dip in some white. I'll do it all over the bottom where these little clouds are too. Add some more white to that. And this is something that you could sit and play with for hours, just going back and forth between turquoise and white and turquoise and white. So I am going to switch back into time lapse. And when I come back, I'll have blow dried my clouds. So now that everything is dry, I am going to peel off my tape. And if you can salvage it, I can't. I'm just gonna take a fresh piece of tape. And then I'm going to put that over my sky down at the bottom, but I'm gonna leave a little sliver of blue showing so I know that when I peel this back off, I am not going to have a white gap anywhere. So with a pencil, I am going to draw this line. And I guess I should have said before about how I'm working on a square. If you don't have a square canvas, you can totally do this composition on a rectangle. I would just maybe like stretch it out a little bit. So I'm going to start with this line. And it just kind of comes at an angle or a diagonal. And it's wavy and irregular. I'm gonna have it cut back here. And then go back. And now let's work on our sand. So I am going to start by making up just one solid shade of kind of sand color. So it's brown, white, mostly brown and white, but I also add in a little bit of red, a little bit more, and some yellow. A little bit more yellow than red. And I am going to paint this just all one solid color. So now that I have that solid color down, I am going to make some lighter brown and some darker brown. So I'm going to mix some white into part of this. And I'm going to mix some brown to another part of it and try and save some of that first color too. So I'm just going to start with the lighter one. Just kind of start to brush back and forth. And then I'll go back to the original color and brush that in. Do some of the darker brown. We want it to be darker along the water's edge. And I also made it kind of look like there are little like tracks in the sand from someone's footprints. So this is another one of those things where you can kind of mess with it forever. So I'm going to switch to time lapse. And if you're painting along with me, you might want to just pause here. And if you are painting along with me, please share a picture of your painting in the comments. Okay. Now that our sand is finished, we can move on to our ocean. And I'm going to start back with my bigger brush, and I'm going to mix up some really light turquoise. So white, a little bit of green, a little bit more green. And just a smidge of blue. And this, we're gonna start going along here. And then as I work my way up, like further out to sea, we're going to get darker and we're going to get bluer. So this color is not this color. This is just going to be a base coat, and then we are going to go add some lime green and then darken up our horizon too. I just dried my base coat, and now I'm going to use that smaller brush to mix up some lime green. So I'm going to use white, green. That's like way darker than I want, so I'm gonna add some more white. And yellow a little bit at a time. A little bit more yellow. And then I am going to dip my brush into water and swirl this into my paint and water it down so it's almost like a watercolor, and I want a little bit more yellow. And then I really use like not a lot of paint when I do this. Start, and then you can just kind of drag it all the way across the shoreline. And I really want it a little bit yellower still. Then once you have that, we'll kind of start trying to blend it into turquoise. So, you know what? I'm just gonna add some white here. I think I need more white. And then water again. Let's see what that looks like. Need some more white. Green. More water. So I'm doing really watered down paint. And I may have to go back and forth between these two colors a couple times to get them to blend. That's better already. So turquoise. And then once we have the turquoise kind of blended in, we can start doing a second layer of this like dark turquoise to darker blue on the horizon. Oops. It's not a problem because you can always paint over acrylic paint. So I am going to take this all the way up to the top. So now that we've finished that, we're gonna peel our tape again. So if you wound up with any of your paint bleeding into the sky, you can kind of see I have like just a little bit there, but I'm not gonna worry about it. There's a little bit in the example too. But you can always take another piece of tape and just kind of move it up and bring that blue up, and be really careful just to use a little bit of paint. Or you could bring your sky down a little bit, but it's acrylic paint, so you can paint over it and you can fix it. And next we are going to do our waves. So the waves are a lot like the clouds, except for I'm using a much smaller brush. So we start with white, and you just kind of dab it on. You can swirl it around a little bit. And then after we do it all in white, we'll mix up some turquoise and do some turquoise kind of underneath and in some other places. So let's start with the furthest back set of waves, the furthest back set of waves. So those go straight across the horizon, and then these kind of start to angle down. So I'm actually going to do this one, the furthest one, and the closest one, and then we can kind of like work our way in. Just do. You don't have to do all of them just yet. We're just kind of giving ourselves like a guideline for when we fill in the rest of them. So we'll do that one, and then we'll start with this one down here. And this one runs diagonal along the shoreline. I could have even come in a little bit more. Okay, so let's go back up to the top. One here. And then down here, have one that angles. Okay, so now that I have some of these waves put in, I am going to take some of my turquoise, dab that in to kind of shadow it a little bit. And it's really, really similar to doing the clouds. Do some that's a little bit darker, some that's a little bit lighter. And I'll even do some like dots that are just the turquoise. And here where I did like some blues. So I'm going to switch back into time lapse for this next part. And then after that, I will show you how to do basically the last part, these ripples in the water. Okay, so the next thing we are going to do are these little ripples in the water where it meets the shore and even comes up onto the beach. And I'm using my little brush and a combination of some white lines and some really light turquoise lines. So I'm gonna start with some white. And I mean, you can really start anywhere. I'll start right here. And then off of that, I'll do another line that kind of comes out. And those two can meet there. And we want to make these kind of interlocking, squiggly shapes. And we want some to be bigger, some to be smaller. It's going to come onto the beach. If you watched my sea turtle painting class on here, I kind of taught something similar with the reflection of the water in that one. So I am going to speed this up and do these lines all the way up to the top. Okay, so now that we have our lines, we are going to start coloring in parts of these little like cells that we formed with different shades of turquoise. There's a little bit of that in there. You don't have to fill in the whole thing. I want it to be a little bit darker. And then, I don't know if you have any sand color left. I don't. I'm gonna make some, so brown, white, keep this pretty light. And really, you don't even have to add the red and the yellow to it because we're actually going to mix this with turquoise. And I'll fill in, I'll put some places. Add some more white to that. Put it some places in the water, but we'll also fill in some of the places where it washes onto the land. Now that needs more sand color. I'll do a few little lines with this color too. Fill a little bit of it in. And you may need to go back with some turquoise in some places and lighten it up. This is another something you could mess with for a long time, but I think I'm going to wrap mine up pretty soon. So that is it. We are done with our beach painting. Thanks everyone for watching. If you painted along, please share a picture of your painting. I'm going to be posting more of these online painting parties, so be sure to subscribe, and I hope y'all have a great day. Bye.